Zetman begins with a clash between two rival superheroes, Zet and Alpha. Jin Kanzaki, who can transform into the superhuman Zet, faces off against Koga Amaji, a young man with a strong sense of justice who fights using advanced technology as Alpha. Their destinies, along with those around them, intertwine as they battle to protect humanity and eliminate monstrous abominations called players. Ironically created by the Amaji Corporation, founded by Koga's grandfather, Michige Amaji. The scene depicts a battle between two players, witnessed by wealthy spectators who gamble on the outcome. Originally intended to create perfect artificial humans, the project evolved into a betting hobby for the rich, with the players forced to fight each other. That night, the players gained awareness and slaughtered everyone in sight. Feeling superior and mistreated, many players believe they deserve better. The story then shifts to two scientists arguing over their creation, a baby boy named Zet. One scientist, Goro Kanzaki, wanted Zet to live a normal life, so he fled with the baby. Years later, when the public was captivated by the hero Alpha, a real danger emerged. In a rapid incident, a man was killed in a public place, and the police, linking the murder to four similar incidents, struggled to find clues about the perpetrator. Meanwhile, Goro Kanzaki, now impoverished and homeless, is seen with a 10-year-old boy, Jin, who he has raised as his grandson. Goro instills in Jin the values of doing good and having a strong sense of justice, leading Jin to believe that saving people is his duty. One day, Jin saw a woman being threatened by a gang of thugs who wanted to rob her. When she was desperate, he offered to help beat the thugs but asked for a reward of 10,000 yen for his services. Without thinking, she then agreed to his requirements. Even though he is a thin boy and his clothes are shabby, he has a pretty great fighting ability so he can defeat the gang of thugs alone. However, when Jin was about to collect his payment, his friends appeared and immediately asked him to leave. His closest friends are a boy his age, Kugameiji, and his younger sister Kano. Unlike Jin, who is poor and homeless, they come from wealthy families. Even so, they didn't mind playing with Jin. Koga has developed a strong sense of justice from the inspiration of the anime hero, Alphys. Because of that, he aspires to become an enforcer of justice who fights crime. He also scolded Jin for asking for something in return for helping others. In fact, a true hero should help others selflessly. But Jin said he was forced to ask for something in return because he needed money. Jin, who realized Kano was embarrassed by her bandaged wrist, told her that his hand was also bandaged. Jin then removed the bandage and showed a ring embedded in his hand. He said that his grandfather asked him to always keep the ring's existence a secret from anyone, but he showed it to Koga and Kano because they were his friends. When he was about to return to his residence, Jin again met the woman he was helping, giving him 10,000 yen and a business card. Her name is Akame Kawakami. She told him that he could contact her anytime if he needed help. Then he thanked her and rushed to meet his grandfather. Arriving there, Jin was shocked when he saw that his neighbors had been killed. He rushed to meet his grandfather, who seemed to be dying in a pool of his own blood due to an attack incident that had occurred moments before. He panicked and then tried to ask a doctor who lived nearby for help, but he was simply rejected because he had no money. Jin then tried to contact Koga, but Koga's cell phone was seized and destroyed by his father, who forbade him to be friends with a poor boy like Jin. Amid his despair, Jin remembered the business card given to him and contacted Akame. Seeing his grandfather, who was seriously injured, Akame rushed to take him to the hospital to get medical help immediately. However, in the end, his grandfather died. Goro and the people who live there are suspected of being victims of a serial murder that has recently been happening. The police then conducted autopsies on their bodies. Meanwhile, Akame invites Jin to stay at her house until social services find the right foster home for him. She, who has a son the same age as him, feels sorry for him after he loses his family. Meanwhile, Michige Amaji, the founder of the Amaji Corporation and Koga's grandfather, is seen observing one of his experiments when his men arrive to inform him that they have located Goro Kanzaki. Michige and Goro were once fellow scientists who conducted an experiment to create perfect artificial humans, but the experiment ended in disaster, turning the subjects into monstrous beings called players. Michige then inquires about Zet. One night, while Akame and Jin are returning home from shopping, they are confronted by a man who attacks Akame, leaving her seriously injured. The attacker is a player in disguise and the mastermind behind the recent murders. Overwhelmed with anger, Jin awakens his hidden power as Zed and defeats the player with ease. However, Jin immediately loses consciousness after using his power. Not long after, a man named Seiji Haitani arrives and seems interested in him. Besides him, A creature named the Sweeper also appears there to eliminate the defective players who have violated the rules and caused chaos. The next day, Jin wakes up in the hospital, relieved to know that Akame's life has been saved. Several years later, Koga, now an adult, watches news broadcasts on television about fire incidents that have recently occurred frequently and have claimed many lives. The fire incident was caused by a player who chose to break Aval's rules so he could do whatever he wanted, including killing humans. Koga, who still aspires to become an enforcer of justice, is determined to uncover the mastermind behind the fire incident, even though he doesn't have superpowers. Elsewhere, Kanoa, who has now become a high school girl, is seen distributing food to the poor and homeless with her mother, and suddenly, she finally reunited with Jin, who had disappeared after the death of his grandfather. She recognized him from the ring embedded inside his wrist. He still recognizes and praises her because she always helps the poor. Kano then met her older brother, Koga, and told him about Jin. Knowing that Jin is still alive and in good condition, he also looks relieved and hopes to meet Jin. Elsewhere, Jin is battling the player who causes a fire incident in an apartment building. Koga and his team, including Kano, arrive there to catch the mastermind behind the fire incident. When Koga went inside, he instead met Jin, who was about to save a mother and her 2 children who were still trapped in the room. As the fire spread throughout the building, Koga prioritized the victim's rescue mission. Meanwhile, Jin is back fighting the player, who attacks him repeatedly while raving about his hatred for humanity. Jin awakens the Zet power in him, which surprises the player and calls him the Charisma. After transforming into Zet, Jin easily defeats the player and extinguishes the fire by demolishing the building. However, as before, using Zet's power leaves him unconscious from exhaustion. Mitsuge, who had been monitoring Jin because he was Zet, takes him to a secret Amaji Corporation facility. To restore Zet's power in Jin, Mitsuge uses Akame as bait. Seeing her weak and imprisoned by the player, Jin becomes enraged and reawakens Zet's power. This time, Jin's opponent is a Zet clone still being experimented on by scientists. The red Zet clone repeatedly attacks and taunts Jin, feeling triumphant when Jin falls without responding. However, Jin ultimately defeats the red clone with a single light blow. Although his power isn't fully awakened, Jin's strength surpasses Mitsuge's expectation. Despite this, the cells in Jin's body begin to deteriorate, prompting Mitsuge to seek help from Goro. Mitsuge had previously ordered his men to bring Goro's corpse to the Amaji Corporation's facility. They connected Goro's head to a computer to extract unknown information about Zet or Jin. Goro instructed them to kill the player near Jin. Mitsuge then questions the player's identity since the Zet clone is dead. A scientist named Kishimoto reveals that the woman resembling Akame is actually a player. Because of that, they had to kill her so that Jin could return to his human form. One of Mitsuge's men then stepped forward and shot the woman. In the end, Jin managed to suppress Zet's power, returned to his human form, and then collapsed unconscious. After Jin finally woke up, he immediately felt angry at what Mitsuge had done to his foster mother. However, Mitsuge ignores this, taking him to an underground facility called the Forgotten Zone, which used to be where the players lived. There, Mitsuge shows the Ring of Exposures, which relates to Angel's Ring and Jin's body. Mitsuge then explains the origins of the players, who were once humans, through a phenomenon called regression. The Ring of Exposures could turn them into violent, bloodthirsty monsters. However, Jin could not escape his fate, so Mitsuge asked him to help fight the monsters. After that, Mitsuge invites Jin out and shows that Akame is alive and well. But Mitsuge forbids him to meet Akame because her safety will be threatened if he is near her. He became very sad and frustrated because he could no longer live with his beloved foster mother. Even so, Jin will do whatever it takes, including becoming a Zet and achieving his perfect form, to protect Akame and everyone else from the players who want to destroy humanity. However, he puts some conditions on Mitsuge. One of them is to make the scar on Akame's face go and try something so that she can live with her son, who has been living with her ex-husband. 2 years later, the police found several bodies that had melted like sand. A senior policeman named Sayama suspects the corpse is a victim of a sand monster, but his younger colleagues mock him for believing in such creatures. Back at the police station, Sayama encounters Jin, who is in jail for fighting. Sayama releases Jin after discovering he was defending a man from a gang of thugs. Sayama, who has known Jin since investigating Goro Kanzuki's death, advises him to avoid fights and lead a better life. Jin appreciates Sayama's concern, as it makes him happy and reminds him of Sayama's guidance from his childhood. The scene then shifts to 3 men threatening their victims, with one, named Shu, causing a victim to melt like sand. A passing girl witnesses the incident and flees, fearing for her life. Meanwhile, Kishimoto gives Jin special chewing gum to stimulate the Z cells in his body, allowing him to transform into Z without needing an emotional trigger. Additionally, Jin receives special clothes that integrate with his body when he transforms, ensuring his attire remains intact. When Jin was about to return to his residence, he accidentally met Kanoa, who was doing volunteer work with her mother. Knowing that now he couldn't jeopardize her safety by being near him, he violently chased her away and hurried away from her. Even though he can't do many things that require him to be close to ordinary humans, Jin still helps people by beating up thugs who often annoy residents and giving food to the homeless. Arriving home, Jin met the girl being chased by Shu and his brothers. Jin told her to leave the house, but she refused and told him what she had just seen. She then begged him to be allowed to hide there for a while. While they were having dinner, Jin felt the presence of the players nearby. He rushed out and asked her to stay in the house if she wanted to survive. However, she had been quietly tailing him instead. On the other hand, his movements were monitored by Mitsugi's men through CCTV cameras. They saw the girl who had been following Jin, lost track of him in an uninhabited area, and instead found her bag left behind when she ran away from the three men. It turned out that all those were traps that had been set up by Shu and his brothers. When Shu was about to kill the girl, Jin arrived there and immediately attacked her. A fierce battle between them was inevitable. Mitsugi's men, who watched Jin, then shot the girl with stun bullets, making her unconscious to cover Jin's identity as Zed. Shu, who realized that Jin was a formidable opponent, changed to his true form, a player. Seeing this, his brothers ran away from the fight because the sweeper would come to the players who violated the rules by changing their form at will. Jin, who had expected this, then bit his gum, turning into Zed, although his appearance was completely different from before. With the power of Zed, Jin can easily defeat the monster. However, he has not been able to return to his human form because apparently, the monster's core managed to escape. At the same time, the sweeper arrived there and immediately eliminated the monster's core, so that Jin finally returned to his human form. However, the sweeper saw Jin as Zed, so the sweeper intended to eliminate him. But then, Seiji appears and stops the sweeper, saying that their boss won't be happy if the sweeper kills Jin. Hearing this, the sweeper then left from there. Jin then asked Seiji about himself and the sweeper. Seiji only told him that he was part of a fall and had been watching him for a long time. He also told Jin that he couldn't wait for Jin to grow up and complete his Z form. When Jin wanted to ask more questions, the man disappeared because Mitsugi and his men had already arrived. Mitsugi explained about the sweeper and warned him to be careful. The next day, the girl woke up and introduced herself as Tanaka. Jin discovered that Mitsugi had been watching him all along, so he ordered Tanaka to leave his house immediately. Meanwhile, Koga was taken to a secret Amaji Corporation facility, unknown even to his father. Inside, Koga's team, which had previously assisted him, had developed various weapons and equipment to help him achieve his dream of becoming a justice enforcer like his superhero idol. However, because it was not as expected, Koga then asked his team to make a few improvements to the superhero costume he would wear because he was determined to be like Elfies. He also thanked his team for being considerate of him and trying to fulfill his dream. After that, he meets an old man named Jiro, who claims to be a fan of him. 2 years ago, Koga became very popular and was considered a Jiro then took out his cell phone and showed Kanoa, who was thrown into the swimming pool, and she couldn't swim. To test whether Koga really has a high sense of justice, Jiro then gives him a choice, save his sister or 3 strangers who are big fans of him. Koga chose to save his sister, and rushed toward the swimming pool. But when he got there, he saw Kanoa, who was learning to swim and seemed fine. Elsewhere, because he chose to save his sister, 3 students who are big fans of him finally have to die. Jiro turns out to be part of a fall, who wants to take revenge on the Amaji family for the heinous deeds that the Amaji family did to him and the players. However, Vol's boss warns Jiro not to harm humans, even when Mitsugi Amaji has caused them misery. The next day, Koga sees a television program that reports the murder of the 3 schoolgirls. Jiro then calls him and tells him he has failed the exam because being a hero is not as easy as one might think. Meanwhile, Seiji goes to Shu's brothers, Abizo and Gekizo, and asks them to kill Jin. He assures them that he will get in the way of the sweeper. If Jiro acts openly, then Seiji prefers to do everything secretly so as not to attract the attention of their boss and the sweeper. While Jin was traveling with Tanaka, They accidentally bumped into Kanoa and her friend. She then approached him to return his necklace, which had fallen during a fire incident several years ago. However, he rudely told her to stay away and hurried off. Shortly after, Jin sensed the presence of players nearby and discovered that Kanoa and her friend had been kidnapped. Abizo then appeared and revealed his true form as a player. While Gakizo oversaw Kanoa and her friend, Jin realized he had left his gun behind, so he couldn't transform into Zet, and Abizo overpowered him. Meanwhile, Koga, who had finally obtained the Alpha Hero costume and equipment he desired, received a call from Kano asking for help. Koga then donned the Alpha's hero costume and rushed to save his sister. Meanwhile, Jin, who was getting desperate, sensed that Kano was in danger, so he decided to save her first. Jin arrived there in time and managed to save Kano. However, Gakizo, who had changed to his original form, namely the cockroach monster, immediately confronted Jin with a herd of smaller cockroach monsters. When Jin was pushed down by an attack from Gakizo, Koga arrived and helped him by killing Gakizo and a herd of other monsters. He then told Koga to prioritize Kanoa's safety and her friend because she lost a lot of blood. Koga nodded in understanding and rushed to fly Kano and her friend with the drone that his team had prepared. On the other hand, some homeless people around the area saw Jin's appearance and decided to help him, but he refused and asked them to leave because the vagabonds wouldn't be able to deal with the bloodthirsty swarms of monsters. Jin, who was seriously injured from trying to fight the players without using the power of Zed, was then intercepted by Seiji, who implants a ceramic spike into his heart to allow him to freely become Zed. Sure enough, not long after, Jin finally turned into Zed. Even now, he can reach the perfect level, turning into Red Zed. Mitsuge and his men, who had been monitoring him through surveillance cameras for a while, wondered what had happened because Jin suddenly turned into Zed and reached the perfect level. On the other hand, Jin felt a tremendous power that had just been awakened within his body, so he was eager to defeat the monsters. When he fought against the player and could easily overtake him, Seiji appeared and told him that he purposely ordered Abazo and his brothers to kill him or harm those closest to him. Seiji wanted to see if Jin could reach the red level Zed, which was the perfect level, and annoyed Jin attacks him because Seiji has used other people to achieve his goals. However, he could easily dodge Jin's attack and left because it wasn't time for him to fight against Jin yet. Elsewhere, Koga is fighting to the death against Abizo, relying solely on the Amagi Corporation's advanced equipment and meager physical abilities. He seems overwhelmed by Abazo, who is a tough player. When he was in a state of urgency, Jin arrived and immediately helped him deal with Abazo and the shrimp monsters, who were his minions. Knowing this was Koga's first encounter with a swarm of monsters, Jin encouraged him to persevere and grow stronger. When Jin, disguised as Zed, mentioned Koga's name, Koga was puzzled as to how Zed knew him. As the battle intensified, Abizo increased his strength and managed to push Jin back, forcing him to revert to his usual Zed form. However, Jin ultimately defeated Abazo and returned to his human form. Koga, witnessing this, was shocked to realize that the monstrous figure who helped him was his best friend, Jin. Meanwhile, Mitsuge, who also observed the fight, was surprised to discover that the heroic figure was his grandson, Koga. Realizing the involvement of the Amagi Corporation and his grandfather, Koga confronted Mitsuge, demanding an explanation for everything that had transpired. Mitsuge was forced to reveal everything to him. Jin, who returned home, was shocked to find out that Tanaka had also been attacked by a herd of cockroaches who were Gakizo's henchmen. However, she managed to survive after Gakizo was defeated, and she seemed so relieved to be able to meet Jin again. A few days later, Jin and Koga came to the hospital because Kano asked them to come. Koga then told Jin that his grandfather had told him everything, so he knew about Jin becoming Zed. A massive fan of the animated film Alphas on television, since he was a child, told Jin that the Red Zed figure was designed based on one of the characters created by the animation studio owned by the Amagi Corporation. The character is the strongest hero character, who can defeat demons. Koga turned out to really admire Jin, and also Zed in his body. However, Jin doesn't seem to think Zed is that great. After all, he ultimately has to suffer because he can't live a normal human life. Even so, Koga seems very excited about it and tells Jin that he will become Alphas and help him defeat the players. Koga even called him a hero named Zetman. When they finally met, Kano asked them to tell her what really happened and why the monsters attacked him. Not wanting to make Kano feel anxious and afraid, Jin kept everything secret by saying they didn't know what was happening. On the other hand, Koga seems to disagree with his decision because his sister should know what their grandfather has done because Michige has indirectly endangered Kanoa's safety. For one reason, Jin decided to let Tanaka live with him, even letting people think that she is his girlfriend. However, Michige, who had warned Jin to stay away from humans for their safety, did not just stay silent and asked him to end his relationship with her as soon as possible. After that, Michige sent Jin to the lab to research his body and help him reach the perfect set level. Michige wanted to understand the cause of the drastic changes in Jin's body and hoped to find answers. Koga accompanied them this time, curious about what had happened to Jin. While Kishimoto was scanning Jin's body to measure his set cells, Michige explained to Koga that the Amagi Corporation had been experimenting to create a non-human species called Net. Due to a minor error in the process, Zet was unintentionally created as a side effect. Unexpectedly, Zet had reached the perfect stage of the experiment, so Michige and Goro named the result Zet. Michige planned to use Zet as the ultimate weapon against the players, but Goro wanted to raise Zet as an ordinary human and let him live a normal life. Even so, Jin tells Koga that he has chosen to live as a Zet because he can protect everyone from monsters' attacks and bring about world peace. Shortly afterward, Jin, for some reason, sensed Goro's presence there and forced Michige to take him to where his grandfather was. Michige also has no choice but to take Jin to where Goro is. However, how surprised Jin was when he found out that all that was left of his grandfather was his head. Michige reveals that they can only save Goro's brain and keep him alive to help them understand Zet. Michige then asks Jin to ask Goro about what they should do so that he can reach the perfect level and maintain it stably because he needs that power to protect everyone from the monster's attacks. However, Jin unplugged one of the wires connected to Goro's head, causing him to die completely. He did that on purpose because he didn't want to make Goro suffer, so he could rest in peace. Jin looks so sad and devastated when he hears Goro's last message to him, asking him if he eats regularly. Not only that, but Goro also asked about his red stone, which turned out to be in Kano. Koga then calls his mother to ask about Kanoa's whereabouts in Jin's necklace with a red stone pendant. Unbeknownst to anyone, it turns out that Jiro has been spying on the Amagi family with insect-sized monsters that can function as eavesdroppers and control anyone in their path. Not long after, several men were seen infiltrating Koga's mother's residence. They were apparently ordered by Seiji to get the necklace and kidnap Kanoa. One of them then sneaked into her room and disguised himself as Jin to retrieve the necklace from her. However, at the same time, Jin and the others arrived and intended to take the necklace, resulting in a fight between them. The intruders later revealed that they were created from a sample of Jin's blood. Because of that, they can change shape to resemble Jin and have a little Zet power. The intruders were not only targeting Kanoa but also intended to kill Michige, who was also there. However, their action was thwarted by Kishimoto, willing to sacrifice himself to protect Michige. Jin finally managed to defeat them all after transforming into Zet. Koga hurried to Kanoa's room and found her unharmed, though an intruder had escaped, stealing Jin's necklace and handing it to Jiro. Just when they thought the attack was over, Jiro, who had participated in the assault with Seiji, detonated the bomb planted in the house. Michige, injured in the explosion, was rushed to the hospital for intensive care. He looked heartbroken and devastated because Kishimoto had sacrificed his life for him. He then wondered who their enemy was, realizing they had the resources to create clones and advanced equipment. Koga, hearing this, became determined to seek revenge for the threat to Kanoa and the destruction of his house. As Jin was about to leave, he encountered Evil's boss, who called himself the Master. Jin was ready to attack him, but a sweeper appeared behind him, threatening Jin with a sword. Master told Jin that he was the first player to rebel against humans exploiting him for profit. Master appeared to be a pacifist, apologizing for the incident at the Amagi family house and revealing that the mastermind behind it was Seiji. He mentioned that most players who joined Evil were peace-loving like him. They also don't like conflict and are always trying to find a way to coexist with humans. However, Seiji didn't think so and wanted the destruction of mankind. Master reveals that he is unable to defeat Seiji. Because of that, he asked Jin to help defeat Seiji and his gang, and Jin agreed. At the same time, Koga received news that Kanoa had disappeared. Shortly after, Koga received a call from Jiro saying that he knew Kanoa's whereabouts. He rushed to tell Jin about Kanoa missing and immediately went to meet Jiro in the parking area, where Jiro then asked him to get into his car. Meanwhile, Koga's team, which has installed a tracking device on him, secretly follows Jiro's car to find out where Koga is. However, one of his team, a man named Hayami, turned out to have betrayed them by damaging the main computer system, so they could not track down Koga's whereabouts, who had been framed by Jiro. After being sedated, Koga is taken to a place where Jiro can monitor his entire movement through the CCTV cameras throughout the room. Jiro then gives him a test, where he is again given the choice of saving Kano or the other girls who are his fans. Jiro then asked if he would prioritize finding his sister or saving the girls first. However, Jiro turns out to be scheming by implanting small monsters in some of the girls there, so he can control them to trap Koga. A terrible incident happened there and made the girls scream hysterically, and then run in fear. At the same time, a giant robot appeared there and immediately attacked Koga. Jiro again gave him a choice, but he chose to face the robot this time and save the girls. Currently, the world is under invasion by monsters, so the city is always controlled by a defense force. Whenever there are signs of a monster, the military immediately evacuates the area and deploys defensive measures. This time, the monster has appeared in Yokohama. The monster in question is a large lizard, and the media are intensely covering the event. People are always eager to see which team will take action today. Many helicopters will corner the lizard, then deploy smoke screens so that Team 3 can approach with heavier firepower. This is followed by a barrage of misfired shots to weaken the monster, until finally, the female team leader delivers the decisive blow with a handheld cannon. The lizard is hit with a blast that sends parts flying all over the city, and the next important task is cleanup. Our protagonist is also among these cleanup crew members. While they clean up, members of Team 3 have killed the monster and are warmly welcomed by the public. Once again, Team 3 has triumphed without any casualties. The male protagonist quietly follows the sanitation team, passing by his childhood friend. The cleanup begins, from slicing meat to other tasks. This unnoticed and uncared for work is their own silent battle with the monsters. They are even ready to provide specimens for research. A cleanup crew accidentally pulls up a piece of tissue containing acid. Fortunately, the explosion only hits the leg, causing little damage. Although Team 3 has killed the monster, the mess they leave behind is too chaotic to sort out the organs. It's uncertain whether the cleanup can be completed within a week. Kafa is moved by his superiors to the intestinal area. Even if he wanted to leave, he must follow his superiors' orders. Handling the intestines is a job not everyone can manage. Just showing up to clean is enough to skip meals for the day. After a long, exhausting day, the dreadful smell still lingers in his nose. On TV now are interviews about Team 3, led by Asizamina. Although only 27, she's not only a team leader, but has already killed hundreds of monsters. She has promised to marry the protagonist, who is now a hero of the city, while the other sits in a room smoking after a day of cleaning monster dung, comforting himself with this socially beneficial work. But the protagonist is still not satisfied, as he too wants a decent life, eating what he likes. The next morning, Kafa is still troubled by the report. Upon arriving at work, his group welcomes him and a new member, Ichikawa, who aims to join the defense force. Surprisingly, Kafa had the same plan, but gave up and stayed in this modest place. When Ichikawa asks why Kafa gave up, he casually replies that his limited strength made him quit. Touched by his own resolve, Ichikawa says he would never give up for such a reason and leaves to change clothes. Kafa is infuriated by this. Today, they continue cleaning bones, with Mei's team scraping them clean. Whole pieces are handed over to Izusotetsu, and Zosumu Zothi's team handles the legs. Kafa and the new recruit follow the team leader to deal with the intestines. Kafa often complains about the harsh life. If he had passed the tests, he would have been a model guard. Before lunch, he hasn't even had a chance to laugh at Ichikawa when it's Kafa's turn. The stench spares no one, and Ichikawa's lunchbox becomes inedible. Kafa gives his junior an energy pack for the afternoon and 2 nose plugs. Not waiting for Ichikawa's consent, Kafa rushes to stuff them into his nose. From here, their relationship begins to develop. By afternoon, they are inseparable, with Kafa guiding his junior meticulously. At the end of the day, the flawless part is also completed. Only Kafa remains to check, surprised by Ichikawa's kindness. Coming to thank his senior for helping on his first day, Kafa is deeply touched. Ichikawa also informs him that the recruitment age limit for the defense force is up to 33 years, giving Kafa a push. Though he says he doesn't care, Ichikawa senses the sadness in Kafa's eyes when he talks about giving up on his dream. And while they were chatting, a monster suddenly attacked Ichikawa. Kafa reacted quickly, pushing him away. The situation is very critical. Kafa orders Ichikawa to leave immediately to report the incident and pursue his dream of joining the defense force, while he stays behind to distract the beast. Ichikawa reluctantly left, tears in his eyes. Kafa lured the monster in the opposite direction and ran as fast as he could, rushing through a portal to momentarily lose the creature, then crashing through a glass door to escape the building, quickly returning to the past as still a boy. Back then, he and Mina lost everything to monsters. Kafa is disappointed because she can't play video games. Before thrusting the ceramic spike into his chest, Jin ordered Koga to kill him if he turned evil. Jin eventually transformed into Zed, achieving the perfect level while retaining his human side. However, upon reaching this level, the ring of exposures in his body activated. This forced nearby players to reveal their true identities, including Seiji and Tanaka. Seiji explained that players changed by the ring of exposures, rather than by their own will, could not revert to their human forms. He also disclosed that he had manipulated Tanaka to get close to Jin, not anticipating that they would fall in love and aspire to build a happy family like humans. Tanaka, as a player, possessed a terrifying power to turn anyone into sand with a touch. Koga, uncaring that she was Jin's beloved, killed her. Witnessing her death, Jin was filled with fury, and Seiji believed his goal of making Jin a perfect Zed who hated humans had been achieved. Seiji and Koga then fought until Seiji defeated Koga. Seiji then asked Jin to kill Koga, because Koga wouldn't think twice about killing him. However, he killed Seiji, kept Koga alive, and left. 3 years later, Koga is now the leader of the Amagi Corporation, replacing his grandfather. He is still on a rescue mission, as Alpha is protecting the residents from the players who are still hanging around killing humans. However, Koga chooses to hide his identity to live a quiet and peaceful domestic life with the girl he once saved years ago. Meanwhile, Jin isolated himself from those closest to him and still eradicated the players from behind the shadows to protect humanity. The anime ends. Don't forget to give me a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you everyone.